Hello, everyone. Welcome to Stories That Shape Us. My name is Joanna Daniel.
And my name is Glenville Daniel.
So, in yesterday's Stories That Shape Us, we talked about spiritual growth, and we talked about some of the things that helps us to grow as we are doing this series on couples, on marriages. We did last week on Before We Say I Do, some of the things to consider when you've experienced trauma. And so this is kind of like marriage after trauma, or we don't know what to call the series. But but today we're going to talk about growth, especially personal growth. And we like doing workbooks. We've done a few workbooks since we got married. We like marriage counseling and marriage retreats and individual work and all of those things that helps us to grow, because when you've experienced trauma, you might want a thing, but you don't have a blueprint of how to get it. And so we were just talking, and I was thinking, what are the things that helps you to grow personally, so that you can grow as a couple. And we were talking about that, and I was saying there is an ideal, that we might want an ideal, but we don't know how to get to that place. So we're going to talk about personal growth, and we're going to share over the next couple of days, or for the rest of this week, we're going to share a workbook that we're doing and just some of the things that we're learning and how it's helping us to grow as a couple and personally.
Okay.
So let's talk about some of the things that we were talking about, some of the things that helps us to grow. And I shared podcasts and books, and I would always share those things with you, and we'd talk about them together. What are some of the things that helps you to grow personally?
Well, interesting enough that some of these podcasts, interestingly that some of these podcasts has really triggered some really good thoughts and ideas. Um, Hence, you know, as we mentioned in previous podcasts, that my personal growth is dependent mostly upon my spiritual growth.
Right.
You know, and so I have I have what I may consider to be a blueprint, and so I try to follow that blueprint. And that blueprint is the life of Christ. And if and so I try to see how much I can love my wife and my children the way that God would love me and love His children. So when I want to have when I wanted to visualize or look at my program or my growth list, I then go to the Bible and I begin to focus more on how Christ's love Christ's love for us as a people, as children. So that would then go to I would then focus that on the children, and and then I would then, for example, Ephesians chapter 5 that talks about how Christ loved the church and gave Himself for the church, and so I would then kind of zoom in on that, and focus and get out what I want to get out from that, and as an individual, you know, I focus a lot on 1 Corinthians 13, especially when I'm reacting to my wife and reacting to my children, and which then help me to react, to be more self-controlled and, you know, and dignified, especially when I'm working with people as well, relating to people as well.
So you do that, and I have a different kind of path to growth, because I can read the Bible, and I do read the Bible to go look for personal growth tips. The Bible tells me about myself, but I like stories. I like to hear other people's stories. I like to see like a blueprint. It's almost like a goal of where I want to get to. And I'm looking at, like, okay, so this is what I want it to look like, but I don't know how to get the steps to get there. So I use the books and the podcasts, and we talk about some of the things. we watched the Black Love series, and we talked about that. When we do lots of marriage retreats and online marriage stuff that sparks really challenging conversations sometimes
Yeah.
that we have to grow through.
Yeah.
And you can use the Bible, but I want like the fine print, like what's beneath this word and what does it mean and how do I do it? Practice it in action. So we have I am a doer person, you are a reflector person. You will think about it and you'll pray about it, and then you'll come up with a strategy. And I appreciate that about you, because sometimes it stops me in my tracks from going off, and that has helped me to grow as well. Just your steadiness in thinking something through longer than I would go, oh, this is what we're doing, let's go. And you would go, hang on, let's have a fast about it, let's have a meeting about it, let's have a meeting to have a meeting. And I'm frustrated, like, can we just do it? But that has helped me to grow.
Yeah. And that's the whole idea, because it's helped. That's the whole idea, because you find that I develop a more of a visionary mindset, and then you then hear the vision, we then discuss, and then after you start penning it, you know what I'm saying? So that then we collaborate. We then use each other's strength, and bring to fusion what is there, what is possible.
So we had to grow in understanding each other's strength and not see it as an obstacle to grow, didn't we?
Yeah. Well, I used to see your strength as an obstacle. I'm gonna say that, it was difficult at some point in time, what I mean, because I want to do this, and here's that she's wanting to do that, and it's like, okay, hon, man, but you're opposing me, you know what I'm saying? And no, we're supposed to go this way. And oftentimes I'll be like, well, hey, I'm the priest. You know what I'm saying?
He was pulling that.
You know,
I'm the priest card.
you know, but it wasn't in a sense of abusive.
You have to do what I say.
You do what I say, and
it wouldn't work.
No. I used to throw my little tantrum. You know what I'm saying? Every grown man have a little tantrum, but eventually God has helped me to not to throw tantrum. I would then say, Lord, you know what? This is your daughter, and you talk to her, and I'll go into prayer, and then afterwards you find that, I grow to be patient and go to God, because that's before I used to throw my tantrums, but then eventually, Joanna then grew to hear me, and eventually we then both learned to realize that, as Joanna said one time, is God said to her that it was the best of her and the best of me combined together, and then we have
made the family work. But then we have to figure out, so what's the best of me and what's the best of you? And you were listing some of the obstacles to growth that we experienced over the years, and that you might be experiencing, or if you're not married yet, that you might not know that these are obstacles to growth. But when growth is there's no option but to grow, because we couldn't stay the same based on what we want for our family. We had to grow to get to that place, and we're still growing. We're not by any means arrived. We've not arrived. We're still growing, but we've learned some things along the way. And I think some of the most important things that we've learned in this growth period for myself is learning more about me, that helps me to be more comfortable with myself, and to also be more comfortable with you. Because as we're growing, we didn't have the book is asking if we consider a model of growth. I didn't have a model of growth.
No, neither do I. All I know is that when I used to have a friend, and I used to see him, in a sense, have this energy, and I'm like, where do you get that energy from, And he was quite confident with it as well, and I then said, what is that energy that you have? He then talk about that intrinsic motivation, So I then begin to research about this intrinsic motivation and begin to ponder on it and think about it and pray about it. How do I get this? You know, and for me, that became a personal a goal to achieve. You know, and which then helped me to be able to become somewhat confident in what I bring to the table with Joanna. So, and especially to recognize that. Um, I'm here to help her to grow, and she's here to help me to grow. And oftentimes we say we use these kind of words, these proverbs like, see me and come live with me is two different things,
Two different things.
you know. And so here it is that me, individual, Jonah, individual, come together, live together, and then you find that there are clashes.
Of course.
But yes, we still have our little clashes, you know, and that's because of not lack of understanding, But then when we come to understand each other, when we really sit down and start discussing and start to, opening up our hearts to each other, then we can see, then we see where we each other coming from, and then we start then coming to and agree, and then we start walking together. Can two walk together except they agree?
No, they can't. But we were both Christians, as we talked in the spiritual growth section. We both had our individual relationship with Christ. But for me, the biggest obstacle to growth was trauma.
Mm. Oh, yeah.
It is an obstacle to growth, isn't it? The past, the things that we've experienced, they present us obstacle to growth. Um, and those are the things, and that's why we have to work on our own personal stories in order to grow together as a couple. So I had to work on my personal story and understand it, and you had to work on your personal stories and understand them, because the stories they shape us. They make us who we are.
Yeah.
So we have to realize that, okay, so these things that we've experienced have shaped us and make us who we are, but who do we want to become?
Yeah.
And that's when we start to peel back and to shed and to lose things along the way so that we can grow.
That's right. That's right. I know for me, I, 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 I knew that I struggled with, at one point I struggled with love. And I make it a business to try to seek out and understand love, you know, and not love in the sense of, hey, I love you, you know what I'm saying? Not love in the sense of, okay, I'm going to provide for you, but love in the context of the emotional aspect of things, the mind and the body connecting to do this one thing, you know. And this one thing is to make sure that I can hold her hand and I can listen to her and I'm present, you know. So here is that was a personal growth for me, because I focused on it. I I spend time making sure that my mind and my body is present, and my body can respond to my thoughts and what I hear from her and so forth. Sometimes I still battle with the mobile phone. When she's talking and I'm on the mobile phone, and I'm like, oh, yeah, yeah, okay, okay, you know still disconnection, but at least I'm still working. When I remember it, I work on it and I try to make sure that I can get it done.
Mm.
You know.
Yeah. So we didn't have a model of growth. We didn't have a model of what we wanted to see. We were talking earlier just before we came on that I said I don't have anybody who I thought, I'm going to keep those in view and I'm going to look at them. I just knew that relationships need to be healthy and there's no option but healthy relationship. And so we had to go figure out, what does a healthy relationship look like? And how are we going to make the decision to do healthy every single day?
Yeah.
And that was having those goals helped us to grow to reach those goals because it was not going to be anything but healthy.
Yeah, yeah. I remember one time, you know, you said something about me being responsible for my own thing, for what I say or what I did, not what you say. And I'm like, huh? No, but you said that, and that triggered me, and that caused me to behave that way. You know what I'm saying? And you know, I'm like, what are you talking about, girl? Listen, man, you said this and that hurt me, and so I respond back. You know what I'm saying? And eventually, as you go along, you begin to recognize that every person is responsible for their own actions. They're responsible for their own words.
So we learn to not be reactive.
So I learned not to be reactive to what you say in a negative way. I learned to listen. So that's a good reaction.
Yeah.
I learned to listen and internalize it so that I can say, okay, so, and try to basically communicate along those lines of what has been said or communicated by her.
And I think a good this is where the spiritual growth part or the spiritual connection part comes in, especially when we have our individual connection. Because the area of growth has always been the Holy Spirit saying, you said that wrong. Or did you consider this as a way for me information for me to go and fix it? If I know that even though you're responsible for your triggers and you're responsible for your responses, you're responsible for your trauma response, I can't be responsible for that. And nobody's responsible. You can't be responsible for anybody's trauma response. If somebody gets angry, somebody has an anger issue and they need to sort it out. But when we are connected to the Holy Spirit and we understand ourselves and we're growing, we can understand that maybe I said this wrong, or I was wrong in this, I made an assumption, because oftentimes our filters are running in the background. And so we are also understanding things based on our experiences. And so those are obstacles to growth. Our traumas, our experiences, our bringing our obstacles to growth too. And so growing through that, taking responsibility, even though I'm not responsible for how anybody feels or their trauma response, I'm responsible for my words. And I want to make sure that when I'm communicating, it's clear. So one of the things I've grown to learn to do is ask, how did you hear that? Because it helps me to understand that, okay, so you didn't hear it in the way that I meant to say it, or what I meant wasn't communicated clearly. And that has helped.
Yeah, that has greatly helped, because that has greatly helped because it's we all do filter things, filter what has been said, and we don't realize that we filter what has been said through certain life experiences, or unfortunately that drops in and we don't realize that it's like it's automatic that it just kicks in,
Yeah.
And then after, then you find yourself start to going along the line of a habitual way of behavior, like getting frustrated, getting annoyed, and and when actually it didn't really, it didn't really matter so much, it mattered, but because we haven't grown to understand the way that we process things, and looking at our response and recognizing that our response and the way we process is corresponding but not corresponding to what has been said.
So there's a disconnect.
So there's a disconnection.
Yeah.
And
those are some things that can cause conflict, isn't it?
Yeah, it has caused a lot of conflict with us, and it's still causing conflict because
we're growing.
We're growing.
We're still growing.
We're growing. So, and we're not going to stop until we perfect it, till we get it right.
You know what? I'm not so much concerned about getting it right. I'm more focused on growing, because we're living in this world and things are going to happen, and as we're growing, we're learning more about ourselves, we're understanding, communication is healthy and clear, we're taking responsibility. For me, I'm not concerned so much about the destination in that respect, but as long as we're learning the tools that we're having along the way.
Mm. Well, you see, interesting. From you heard her, her mindset is different to my mindset
Because we're different
because
people.
we're different people. However, because for me, until I can accomplish it, like once I perceive it, I believe that I can achieve it. And so here it is that
Motivation speak.
so here so here is where that ingrown thing for me, you know, is once I see it, I'm going after it.
Do you know what perfecting it will look like for you? Will you know when you arrive at a destination and said, "That's it, it's perfect for me now. I can move on to the next thing," or what will that look like? Will it be, "I'm gonna just do this one thing and get to a destination, and then I pick something else up"? What will that? Will you know when you've arrived there?
You never know when you're right there, but you have a criteria, you have a mark where you, for example, you get a heartbeat, and the heartbeat go up to that highest point. And for me, that highest once I get to that highest point is when a situation occur, and I can respond to that situation in the right frame, in the thought, in what I planned to, how I planned to respond, or how I should respond, and I can keep it flatline across responding to that.
Okay.
So
So
for me, that's my
right.
goal.
You said should respond. So you have like a you have criteria for yourself are based on what should is for you.
Yeah,
And it's you that give yourself that
yeah,
correct. Nobody has done it. Nobody's given you that definition or description. It's not a requirement from me. You
no,
have it for yourself around what your should be.
yes,
Um and you're working to
and
that template.
yes, yes,
I am enjoying it as we go along. while you while you do that, I'll just enjoy. I'll just enjoy.
you know,
I just enjoy the ride.
I want there were one time, I would I would respond, I would disappoint her, I would hurt her feelings, and then after one time she said, "Oh, this is one of your patterns." I was like, "What's that pattern?" You know, or you try to do things and to nice up and so forth, and and I said, "I don't do that." Then eventually one day I recognized that I normally do that. I try to nice up and go get a cup of tea and do this and do that,
I don't
and
need a cup of
you
tea.
know and and eventually, I realize that having recognizing that, I I try to stop myself from doing it. You know what I'm saying? I try to stop myself from doing it, and but then, which was something that I didn't realize that I was doing all the time. But praise God that I'm able to stop. Is a terminology that is a term that called people pleasing, you know. And so I try not to start. I'm really, really focused on that, and that's another personal. That's for me. That's a personal goal,
A personal growth goal.
personal growth goal where I don't people please.
So isn't that interesting? Because we know that people pleasing is a coping strategy. We know it's a trauma response. We know we develop it in systems that wasn't healthy. And here you are using it in a way that wasn't a bad way. It wasn't bad. It wasn't manipulative. It wasn't any of those things. But it didn't fit all the time the context or what was required at that time. You were using a tool that you felt would have soothe. I didn't need soothing. And so after I saw the pattern over a while and mentioned it, and so you took that on, and it's a personal growth goal for you that
Mm,
I must change this,
mm,
even though I benefited from it for so long that when you started to change, it was kind of like, oh, he's taken this thing away that I benefited from, but I wanted you to change that pattern because I know it was an obstacle to deeper personal growth for yourself and for us.
yeah, yeah. And the thing is that it's interesting because it became like a thin line between people pleasing and showing that you're sorry. And you don't. And for me, I used to struggle between Well, until I hear her start talking about this people pleasing, I didn't realize that I was people pleasing, and I thought it was just trying to show that, okay, I'm sorry, and and but then it actually turned out to be that you're really going overboard now to do the go and beyond, way and beyond it to show that you're sorry, which turned out to be like people pleasing.
Mm.
Even though we can then, as Christians, your Christian might be, but then I thought, didn't Christ say you can go the extra mile with the individual?
That's interesting, isn't
You
it?
know, um, but that's on the individual who has been hurt. You know, not the individual that hurt.
Right.
Is the individual that has been hurt
Okay.
that will go the extra mile to accept what the person is seeking to give. You know, because that's their way of saying they're sorry and so forth. So yeah, I think at least that's what I understand.
All right. I mean, I think we'll end today here, and we'll look tomorrow at the big picture. What are some of the things that underlies growth when people experience trauma and you're trying to have a happy home, a happy marriage? And if you're not married yet, maybe you could benefit from this series as well. Just looking at what are some of the things that I need to do. Several things have come out of this conversation, how we grow differently as individuals, the things that are important to you and the things that are important to me, expectations that you have for yourself that is not from me, but you have given it to yourself because of the growth that you want to achieve for you, that we benefit from, as a our marriage benefits from in our home.
And I think at some point we need to do one on expectations, because I've I've been kind of reflecting on that, and I'm like, wow. Wow.
Important, isn't it?
I've never talked about expectations. I never really considered expectations and so forth. I just did what I thought was that needed to be done because I'm expected to do that, but never looked at it from the perspective of, oh, it's an expectation.
I mean, we'll do it next. We'll do it tomorrow. But like earlier, we were talking about like what society gave you and what they gave me, and the expectations that it put in me to require of you, and you're just doing it without thinking. And I think maybe that's some of the things that underpin our growth journey that we'll talk about. We'll talk about next time, because I think it's really important, because I think lots of people are locked in there. I heard some of it in the presentation that I did this weekend in one church. I heard some of it, and I think it's important. We'll talk about it next time. But thank you so much for joining us in this episode of Stories That Shape Us. If you want some more of this kind of conversation on stories that shape us, let us know in the comment section, because we want to continue it throughout the rest of the 100 and odd days that we have, but we're not sure. We want to make sure we give you what you want. So if you want some more of this kind of conversation, do let us know below. So thank you for joining us in this episode of Stories That Shape Us. I hope you'll join us on the next story.